Thank you so much, Mayor, for taking the time to sit with me today to kind of talk about the year coming forward. So I'm really glad you're here. Now, we're in a bit of a unique situation because you are the new mayor of Gravenhurst.
That is true.
So we can't really do a year-end review.
Right.
But what we could do is what your hopes for 2019.
Sure.
And of course, that stems from some of the things that you talked about and the work that you have been doing these past couple of months.
Right.
So talk about some of the things that you're most looking forward to as the new mayor of Gravenhurst for 2019.
Well, thanks, Melissa, for having me on again and for being allowed to share some of my thoughts and give you some updates on what's happening. I really enjoyed being able to do this and share with the community. So certainly it has been an interesting 2018, to say the least. As you know, I mean, going through the election process, we all went through that and struggled through that, you guys as well as us. And it was a great experience, I'm sure, for lots of people, but maybe not so much for lots of other people. So I think eventually you get through that and then you want to move on with business. And that's, I think, where we're at now. So we had our inauguration, of course. And our inauguration, we had at the Opera House, there was somewhere in the neighborhood about full house, about 300. I know, it's pretty amazing. It was a great evening and really a positive vibe. People were really excited about new council with the new councillors coming on and those that have been on and their new roles. So it was a really positive feeling that night. And so moving forward after that, then we had our first council meeting this past week. And it wasn't a really heavy agenda or anything like that, but it was a great opportunity to actually go through the process. And what we did, just while we're on it, is what I asked the clerk to do was to slow the meeting down and explain why we were going into the next part of the meeting so that those that were new councillors, and even those that have been on and always wanted to ask why we do it that way, it was a great opportunity for the clerk to explain, okay, now before we do consent agenda, here's what happens with a consent agenda, and here's how you work as a council. So we did that throughout, what's the difference between a committee of the whole and council. And so all of those things were explained as we went. So it was more of an education experience. We had done a day and a half of orientation actually with the new council the week before that. So they were familiar with our procedural bylaw and those kinds of things. But when you're actually doing it first time, it's a really good time to slow it down. I guess it's that teacher coming out in me. Yeah. You know, we want to make sure we educate them, right? So, that we had a really good meeting and we got through it. I served as the chair and it was all good. So now we move into really getting to the business kinds of things that are coming up. And of course, one of the very first things that we're going to have to deal with will be the marijuana or the cannabis legislation that we have to decide by January 22nd. So that'll be on the January 15th council meeting that we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah. What was the consensus around that so far? Have you talked with council?
Yeah, just one-on-one and just getting a sense from them as to what they're hearing. And truly, there's been very little conversation, and even talking with the other mayors, there's been very little conversation in the communities. One thing I have heard, though, is that communities, and Gravenhurst is no different, that there are illegal drugs on the street. That's the reality. And there are people that are doing that. And by not having something that's legal, it just continues to encourage that to happen. Right, exactly. And so more than anything, I've probably heard more about, we need to address it. And so I suspect although I can't speak for all councillors, but I suspect in January 15th, we'll probably, I don't know for sure, but we'll probably opt in. I think that's probably the way we'll go. So that'll be the very first thing we address. But then the next following that, then we got to get right into budget. So we have capital budget, which in itself, once again, is a whole new learning experience. Yeah. I mean, a municipality have so many assets that they are responsible for. Everything from bridges, roads, buildings, all that kind of stuff. Okay. And so it's a lot.
So, I mean, so let's talk on that. What are some of the things that, that you've seen or that you can gauge might be some of the big projects that you want to get started that might be in the budget come 2019?
Well, certainly from a capital perspective, the constant issue truly, and I don't know whether it's any different, I don't think so throughout Muskoka, but roads is a significant issue. It's not going to go away. It's still a big issue. And certainly because we're in the winter months right now, it's even more so of a problem because you get into snow. And if we end up we're way ahead on the lake I live on. Our lake has been frozen for 3 weeks and it's truly earlier than normal. So If we continue to have this, the amount of sand that they've been using since November has been unbelievable. So again, that's a cost to the municipality just to keep roads safe. So that's a big issue, and that's going to continue. But constant trying to keep up with road maintenance, potholes, and bridges, and all those kinds of things are constant.
So you're saying that this year might be, the 2019 might be more of like, it may not be the sexiest projects that you have on the agenda, but it's ones that are going to enable the community to, and the infrastructure of Gravenhurst to be able to kind of enhance and move forward so you can do those fun projects, right?
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a good point. And I do think that, I mean, there's some reality about things that you have no choice over. Can we let roads go? Probably not.
No.
Can we fix them? We probably have to. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, people pay a lot of taxes in Gravenhurst like they do everywhere else. But one of the things they at least want is they want good roads, or at least roads that are passable during the entire year. So you're absolutely right. There are things that the new council has to address, which is there's things that you might want to do, and there's things that you must do.
Yeah.
And so things like roads are a critical piece. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk about rounding. I know you. We can. You have a big dream, and we can
Yep.
discuss this for a whole hour. But
Yep.
I want to get to you as the mayor.
Yep.
So, as a mayor,
Yep.
come this time next year when
Yes.
we do the year-end review.
Right.
What are you hoping to have accomplished in that year, in the year 2019?
In a big dream, right? I mean, you know, it is, and part of it is dreaming. That is part of it. But really, truly, I don't think we can get by this year without addressing housing. It is absolutely, you know, in talking with Graydon Smith and Scott Aitchison, I mean, we're all experiencing the same problem, which is we just don't have housing. And it's not just, and there is a big concern about affordable housing. That is a big concern. There's lots of families, from what I'm hearing, lots of them throughout Muskoka, and including Gravenhurst, that are on waiting lists to get housing, simply because they can't afford it and there just isn't available. But it isn't just that. We had a district council meeting yesterday, and we were talking about it is housing right from rentals, low-end rentals, high-end rentals, low-end purchases to high-end purchases. We have just no availability of housing, period. And that's a really big challenge. I've had people say, Paul, I would love to live in Gravenhurst, but I can't find a place. In fact, just yesterday, I had one of the district staff who lived in Gravenhurst, needed to buy another house, couldn't find a house in Gravenhurst. And that just happened this last 2 weeks.
Wow.
Could not find a house there and ended up having to leave Gravenhurst because of that. So that housing, for sure, I don't think any of us in Muskoka can let this go. We need to have a really consistent and long-term plan about how we're going to address this. We need shovels in the ground.
Okay.
You know, part of it too, I think, is, Melissa, that it's an economic development issue as well. You know, if you're trying to entice businesses to come here, one of the very first questions, I think we probably talked about this earlier, one of the very first questions they ask you is, tell us about housing.
Yeah.
Where can our staff move to? And when the answer is, sorry, we don't have any shovels in the ground, that's not helpful to get businesses to move here. And we've had a couple at the airport that have been very interested, but that's been a challenge. It's been a challenge, yeah. So housing is one, for sure.
Well, then, you know, come 2019, when we have this discussion again, I'm going to ask you about that, and we'll see where that progress grows.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, to
Yeah.
round it all off, I've asked all the mayors to do this who have interviewed
Sure.
this past week. I'd like you to do the same. You could use this camera, you can look at me, whatever you're most comfortable
Sure.
with. If you have a Christmas greeting to your residents of Gravenhurst, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Melissa. To all the residents of Gravenhurst, both permanent and seasonal residents, but also those that are visitors to Gravenhurst during this time of year, it's really important to recognize that we all need a break, and we all need to recognize this season. I want to wish, on behalf of Council and also the staff of Gravenhurst, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, and I hope that you have a healthy and a prosperous 2019.